Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first show of Myconauts. This is where you can get everything fungi, psychedelic and non-psychedelic, and psychedelics in general. Um, we have Jacob from Oklahoma Fungi. Thank you
Hello, hello.
for being our first guest. I've been paying attention to you for the last few years and always kind of wanted to see the face behind the name.
I
Just
appreciate
around Oklahoma City, I just seen like your some of your gear, especially at Craig's, and yeah, man, it's nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, James and Peter. I appreciate you guys, putting this together and allowing me to hop on and kind of tell a little bit about my story and how I kind of even got to the point where you saw my products at Craig's. So
Oh yeah,
it's been a long journey. It started in 2020, so it's nice to still be going 5 years later and still be working on not just mushroom business things, but helping to actually make change within our state with like legislative policy and things like that. So it's awesome to get to help people not just find their peace with the medicine, but also get to help people access and get to access like great quality food that's outside. So yeah, it's one of my big goals to help educate others and promote all things mushrooms. So this seemed like a great podcast to hop on.
nice. And so, how did you get started, man? Because I think of like Oklahoma, you don't necessarily think of like fungi. I mean, of
Yeah,
course, there's a ton of that down there, but like fungi, you have everything from pretty cool website, pretty cool YouTube channel, products around town, and you run a festival. You just don't associate Oklahoma with like mushrooms.
yeah, yeah. That's very true, and honestly, that's been one of the reasons why I think we've seen a lot of interest, not just from people from Oklahoma, but when we did the first Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, we had people come from Kansas, Missouri, basically every state surrounding Oklahoma. It drew a lot of people in, and there, it was so funny to hear people say very bluntly, we had never any intentions of coming to Oklahoma until we saw this event. And they said with we and so although people may have certain feelings about Oklahoma, at the end of the day, the willingness to learn about mushrooms drew them into our state, into our event. So I think that says a lot about people's interest in mushrooms, and I think it also says a lot, for our community locally, because it takes a lot of people, it takes volunteers, it takes a lot of vendors, a lot of networking to pull off a good event. And I really think that, if the local community can be supportive and you can draw people from out of state, you'll have a really successful time. And that's, I've been very grateful because that's what we've seen the past 2 years.
That's awesome. And like Oklahoma is one of the states, like, you kind of hear things about it on the outside, but when you actually go to Oklahoma, and it wins you over. I mean, hell, look at Brandon Russ, for example. He came from San Diego, and he's a permanent resident now.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I've been very fortunate to work with Brandon a lot. Even before I started the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, when I was, teaching about the benefits of fungi in the soil, Brandon would show up to the classes and he would also teach a little bit. And I would tell people, hey guys, like this guy really knows. Like if you want to know the chemistry and you want to really know what's going on a chemical level, talk with Brandon after the class. And so Brandon and I developed a good relationship, and then that we went on to actually co-host classes at Bokashi Earthworks. And then when I decided to launch the first Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, he was there as an educator, and the second year he was there as a vendor. So we have a good relationship, and it's through building these like local networks with local educators. He may not be from Oklahoma, but he's there now and he's willing to teach Oklahomans. And so for me, that's the most important thing, is if you're willing to learn, then I think there's people that we can have that are willing to educate, especially on this topic of mushrooms. And I mean, for the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, we've had educators come from California, New York, Maine, Florida. And then we had a vendor last year come all the way from Puerto Rico. So
whoa,
word gets around about these events. And, when you have speakers like Willie Myco and, people with a lot of history and a lot of good educational videos like Willie does, I mean, you can draw a big crowd. So we're very grateful for the community. One, because it's without the local community, it's really hard to spread the word. And I think, both of it's kind of difficult to get the word out about psychedelic or even mushrooms nowadays on social media. I mean,
Yeah,
my Instagram was taken down. I mean, I had 5 Instagram accounts all verified, and they still got me the boot. And so at the end of the day, it's really nice to be able to market and sell on social media. But when social media goes away, if you don't have a local community to support you, you're gonna feel isolated, and that makes you want to keep the phone in your face, right? And really, I think mushrooms want us to disconnect, but disconnect from this and connect to like people. And so I think in some ways, it's more important to focus on building local community, or it is as important to focus building local community as it is to build a following online. And I'm saying that as someone who, it took 5 years and it took a long time to develop. I went from hosting classes where no one, like literally no one came, like hosting a whole class, no one showed up. Then you just keep going. You just host another class. Then maybe 2 people come, and then 3 people come. And slowly you start to see these numbers go up. And it got to the point over 4 years that it went from seeing consistent, 30 to 40 people come to these classes that were free, that we were like, let's just host an event, let's just start doing it in a festival. And so it didn't happen overnight. It literally took years to find my community, to find people that were supportive within the Oklahoma City area, and at the same time building that internet reputation for attracting people to Oklahoma. And people were like, what the hell is going on in Oklahoma? Like, who is this Oklahoma fungi? Like, no one does mushrooms in Oklahoma. Like, that was always the reaction that I got from people. And so I kind of stuck with it because, people don't think of mushrooms when it comes to Oklahoma, but we've changed that. And it's with the community that we've kind of like changed what people think of.
and it's not even all psychedelics. I mean, most of your content is for functional mushrooms. Like when you were selling morels, like you're showing like all the counties where you're finding morels. I was like, oh shit! Like there's a lot more down there than I thought there would be.
Yeah, like for me, one of the things, like when I first started, as just being a gourmet mushroom farmer and selling, psilocybe spores and stuff like that, it was really hard for me to get the point across to people. It's like, I'm not just interested in psychedelic mushrooms. Like, yes, they're cool, but there's also like thousands of other species that I find honestly, from the scientific level, a bit more interesting, like from a foraging perspective, kind of more delicious from the culinary perspective. So, magic mushrooms have their place. They're incredible medicine, but also people who think that that's the only mushroom of interest in all of kingdom fungi, they're just missing so much more. So, for me, having been someone who's, I found a psilocybe cubensis in the wild in Oklahoma, like my dream as a forager, as a psychedelic forager, has come true. And so I've also foraged edible mushrooms in Oklahoma. And so for me, food versus of all my 5 years, I've only found a psychedelic mushroom one time. But all it took was one time to collect those spores, and I never needed to find it again. And honestly, I haven't had the luck to find it again. So, yeah.
It's crazy because like the Oklahoma wild caught my attention like right away because it's a new variety. It just looks different. It's like real leggy. I mean, it's a psilocybe, but I haven't seen anything like it before. And it's a new variety. And like growing up, because my background's in biology, well, microbiology, but I did undergrad research and grad research, and still hang around the department, do some research. But we always dreamed of like going through like the Amazon and finding, some undiscovered plant or, fungus or animal. But
Dude,
you found a whole new variety, and a cow pasture in the middle of Oklahoma. You know,
Yeah, and
who would have thought?
it was a a landowner. They were homesteaders who started finding these mushrooms growing in their compost, and they just had no clue what they were. And so, it wasn't like I was at the right place at the right time. It's just that as an educator, as someone who's like, hey, if you find those mushrooms, if you find any mushroom, you can submit it to my website and I'll help you identify it. And so these landowners did that. And when they sent me the photo of what they thought what the mushrooms looked like, I called them and asked if I could come out and visit and talk about the mushrooms with them. And so, long story short, showed up to the property. The most beautiful, premium looking Psilocybe cubensis mushrooms were growing. It wasn't the first time that these mushrooms were found in Oklahoma. They've been growing there for decades. But in my opinion, it was the first time that it was fully documented. Like, I had a YouTube video that had, I think it had like 30,000 views. That was taken down a long time ago, but it was from me basically getting out of my car, showing you what the mushrooms looked like, going home, doing spore swabs, and basically showing people how to go from field to spore. And then now being able to purchase the genetics on my website, it's like from that day, people can really grow something that's truly unique and wild. And if you grow like heirloom vegetables, if you like landrace varieties of cannabis strains, I mean, this is an interesting and unique variety of Psilocybe cubensis that you'll want in your genetics collection.
I didn't think like the genus went that far north. I mean, yeah, we got like hillbilly from Arkansas and stuff, but Oklahoma, I heard like their pans might be out in Oklahoma, even like in Kansas and stuff.
Yep,
But just
pans, pine.
that variety just looks different. And may I ask, also it looks like it's a fast grower and prolific grower. So I think I see like you had like a mono tub like full of them, or was that a bag? I can't remember.
Yeah, if you have access to the website, definitely check out the OK Wild like product description on the website, and it has a bunch of different photos. One's of the original find of what it looks like. I mean, it was a tiny mushroom, about 2.5, 3 inches tall. And then when we took the genetics and we grew it indoors, it grew incredibly fast, but it grew incredibly long, and so that's why
Yeah,
we named it Okie Footlong. Because the mushroom, it grows incredibly fast, and for whatever reason, it's got an 8 to 12-inch stem with a tiny little cap on the end. And so since then, we've done genetic testing, we've done potency testing. It is in the Psilocybe cubensis genus, and it's not a new variety like genetically, but it is a new varietal to the genetic pool of as far
yeah,
as like landrace varieties. So it's really cool, and I think there's a lot of potential in what people use for their everyday cultivation. When you're beginning and you're starting to grow, it's nice to start with a strain that's really fast growing. And based on our potency analysis, like over the past 3 years, it's very consistent. It's around 0.5% per dried gram. And so
nice.
it's a very low, moderate dose, great for beginners. And it's not too overwhelming. It's not going to, cause an ego death or anything like that. And so it's great for people who are looking to get an intro. And so for me, being born and raised in Oklahoma, it's honestly like a blessing to be able to eat something that grows naturally in Oklahoma to help me. So it's just like this cool, like source your local anything aspect. And so for those of you who are interested in, microdosing, I implore you to learn more about the different strains and the different potencies, and ultimately figure out which ones work best for you.
I've been hitting the tidal wave the last couple times. I'm probably gonna slow down. So
Yeah.
something like OK Wild sounds pretty amazing. And when you ran potency tests, did you look for other tryptamines or alkaloids?
Yeah, so for the most part, it was just, it just popped up psilocin, psilocybin. There was baeocystin in one of them, but really, to be honest with you, I can see if I can pull up the. Let me see if I can pull up the COAs, but I haven't looked at them in a minute, but I do remember. Here we go, right here. No, like in this one that was tested back in October of 23, we just popped for 0.5% per dried gram of psilocybin, and that was it for that test. And so, at the end of the day, the testing is expensive, so I only do it
Oh
one
yeah.
time. I do it one time a year. But one thing that I do to keep it more consistent is I grow on the same substrate. So I try and keep as many of the variables the same. And over time, if I notice that the strain is getting lower in potency, then I know I need to refresh back to the original genetics by spore. But if I notice, that maybe the potency is increasing, then I need to fruit out that specific variety and then take spores from there, because that could potentially be a more potent variety of Oklahoma Wild. So the testing is good. It does help. But at the end of the day, not everyone has money for testing. And
Oh, it's
so I do tell
expensive.
people, yeah, I tell people it's like at least $100. It can be, $80 to $100 per test. And if you are only buying or growing a little bit at a time, it's not really worth it. And so the best thing that you can do is buy like some of the microdose journals that you see online. I've got some that I can recommend, but majority of people have access to just a limited amount of a specific variety. And so they only get maybe like a month or 2 weeks to a month's worth of a specific variety. And then they, all they can find is another one. And so if that's you, or if that's people that the best thing you can do is write down the name of the variety if and then how it's making you feel. And if you're noticing a difference, because it's coming from my personal experience, there is a big difference if you were to microdose Oklahoma Wild versus microdose some Penis Envy, or you microdose some Tidal Waves or some B plus. All these different varieties, and in my opinion, do affect me physiologically. Like they do affect me differently and mentally. So just like with pharmaceutical medication, when your doctor prescribes you new medication, they tell you if there's any adverse effects, please let me know. We'll change the medication. And so I tell people to approach microdosing in that specific variety with that same mental framework, because if you approach it like microdosing Tidal Waves was too overwhelming, microdosing is not for me, then you're kind of just throwing it all into one bag and throwing the sink out with the dishwater, I think is the saying, or something like that.
Yeah. In regards to that, I think I got lucky because like my first shrooms I had like when I was a teenager were Golden Teacher, which is like,
Oh
good
yeah.
introductory mushroom, As
Yeah,
with
that's
like
a
I were to
solid.
do like some some apes or something, I think it would probably ruin it for me.
Yeah, my
But
personal experience, I had 3.5 grams of Golden Teachers the very first time, and it was amazing. Beautiful, amazing, blissful experience, very euphoric. Of course, being my first time and not really knowing, after a couple of days, I was like, man, that was so good. I want to try that again, but I'm going to eat even more. And because I had only, gotten a small quantity, I had to try a new variety because that was all what was available to me. And so it ended up being 5 grams of Penis Envy. And so I went from
ooh,
three and a
ooh,
half
ooh.
of Golden Teacher to 5G of PE. And I think, Terrence McKenna, I later learned, talks about, 5 grams of PE. And, it's, 5 grams of anything typically it will cause you on an ego death journey. It will send you on a very far journey. And so
Yeah, I did
ultimately,
5 grams of tidal wave last week and still kind of recovering from it.
yeah, it's one of those things where they just hit different. They really do.
Woo, 5 grams of penis envy. I've never done that high with like penis envy or apes, just tidal wave.
Yeah, I
But
mean, since then, my highest dose has actually been. I've actually, some people get stomach issues. They get a little bit of discomfort when they eat the raw mushrooms, and so capsulizing can help. Putting it in chocolate can help. Making lemon tech can help. But you know
Five
what I
grams of 5 grams of penis envy lemon tech it.
you first. You
No,
first.
I'm
Yeah,
not that brave.
yeah, me either. But the for me at least, you know, what I've found is that I've gummies with extract, like pure extract gummies, when I'm getting a consistent dose of 2 milligrams of psilocin, pure psilocin. So it's already like with cannabis, you know, it has to decarb to become ready to be activated, right? Well, with psilocybin, it has to dephosphorylize to get into psilocin, and so these gummies they're already in psilocin. The most I've eaten is 10 milligrams, and I was in this black like space where I saw these kind of like a lava lamp where you see these shapes like gum together, but they
Yeah.
never fully touch. And so there was like every color of the rainbow was just like swirling around and getting really close to touching, but then they would like not touch. So it was a very interesting journey for me, filled with colors and geometric shapes and um yeah, that was for my 28th birthday.
Nice. Ah, you're a youngin.
Yeah,
You're a
yeah.
young.
Still exploring. Like I said, that 5G of PE was definitely a youngin's mistake. You know what I mean? Anyone who's listening, definitely work your way up there. It's not nothing to brag about to take it slow and steady.
So for the psilocin extract, were you doing like an alcohol, like or water alcohol extract, or?
Yeah, so in like places like Colorado, it's really nice because I've got friends that are, if I get to go up for like the Colorado Psychedelic Cup, you know, it's for them it's not commercialized, but they are allowed to get into extracts, and they can make dosed gummies. And so and I've got a lot of great friends in Colorado who are doing these types of things for the I don't want to say commercial market in Colorado because it's not a commercial market, but it's more of a decriminalized donation based market,
Yeah,
so
I think they give
that's
you like what, a 12 by 12 space to cultivate or like
yeah. And
user, which
and
is awesome.
it's nice. I know people who have been waiting for this sort of decriminalization slash, and it was decriminalized, but now it's fully legalized for medical. And so I know people who were very happy when it was just decrim and there was less regulations. And I know people who, once these medical regulations came out, they applied and they're happy to be a part of this program. But there's always going to be people who don't want to be a part of it. And so for me, in Oklahoma, what we want to see is decriminalization. We want to make sure that people aren't going to jail and that tax dollars aren't being spent on arresting people for cultivating natural medicine. The distribution of large quantities is, kind of one of the things that I think people have to come to terms with. If you want to be able to cultivate at home and you want to be able to grow your own medicine, we can't just have like a pound of shrooms on us at all times in turkey bags. You know what I mean? We've got to find some sort of like line where we can acknowledge that we need mushrooms for our whether it's religious purpose or medical purpose, but also we don't need to have so much on us that it could be implied that it looks like commercial distribution or something like that.
Yeah, pound of mushrooms. How many years would that take? Like two,
Honestly,
three?
no, I mean, I know. So it really depends on how much space you have, man. I know people
Oh
who,
no, wait, like taken,
oh,
consuming.
oh yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know if you were saying that I had a pound of mush. I mean, to be honest, it depends. Like I see YouTube videos, and there's been recent videos of people going famous online for eating like 50 grams and going Instagram live and just in live streaming their experience. Personally, for me, I would not be doing that. I think that that's probably not the best for personal image or for potential like work repercussions, etc. But to each their own. Everyone do what they want to do. Ultimately, I think I will continue to stay off of social media, like in those aspects, because mainly because I have always been an educator, a mushroom educator, not necessarily like a psychedelic influencer or like a psychedelic um, educator specifically. I like to teach about all mushrooms. Yes, I hosted the Oklahoma Psychedelic Conference, but I also host the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival. So it's it's this I don't know what to say. It's like a beautiful dance between catering to people who are interested in psychedelics, but also trying to be more encompassing of what we should all be learning for our mental health and physical well-being.
Oh yeah. So I mean, functional mushrooms I love, especially like lion's mane. Like it feels like
Yeah,
it just clears my head, you know. And
yeah,
just like foraging mushrooms, like you go out and find like chicken of the woods, just see this big orange mushroom. There's nothing like it.
yeah. It's like the one. I don't know what your experience is in the casino, but I like to compare mushroom foraging very much to gambling, because sometimes you go to the casino, you show up, and you walk out empty-handed. Sometimes you go to the casino and you walk out with your hands full. Sometimes when you go in the forest, you walk in, there's no mushrooms. Sometimes you go in the forest, you walk out with a chicken of the woods or a handful of morels. But when you find them, you become addicted and you keep
Oh yeah.
going back. So that's what I always tell people, like, all it takes is finding your favorite edible mushroom one time in the wild, and you will forever be addicted to going outside and trying to find that mushroom or other species.
And also just foraging, you kind of make like patterns and stuff. Like, oh hey, this mushroom, is associated with like these trees.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you start thinking about like the bigger image. Or you find mushroom, and there's like ants or like bugs crawling on it. You're like, okay, what species are those? And just everything fits together, kind of like a hyphy network. But
Yes. Yes.
but
And you're like these ants are covered in spores from the fungus that's on
oh
this
yeah,
tree. And there's just all these amazing way that these things are interacting and connecting. And one of the things that I recently heard was, sometimes when people on mushrooms, they look at trees and they're like, oh my gosh, the trees are breathing. But in reality, the trees are always breathing. But it's
they're
only
always
sometimes it's only in these psychedelic experiences do we actually realize that everything around us, and we start to have more empathy. We realize, like, oh yeah, the trees are living, these ants are living. And I like to also bring up, there's been a lot of psychological studies done with magic mushrooms, and a lot of the most interesting ones, in my opinion, have been on people who are race have racist tendencies or racial tendencies, or out blatantly racist, and they sign up for these trials when they microdose magic mushrooms, and they come out changed. And so not 100%, but more than 50% of the people who entered, who went on a microdosing regimen, who before had proclaimed themselves as a outspoken or confident racist, had undergone this microdose experience and came out and said that they felt less strongly about those beliefs and they felt more connected to everyone. And so there's just so much to learn from magic mushrooms, and so much to learn from all mushrooms in general. So that's just why, for me, without social media, I'm still doing what I'm doing on the local level. I don't need to have the social media followers to feel like I'm making an impact locally, or to feel like I'm still growing my knowledge with fungi.
I'd say you have an impact, man. Like you even have like you're known in the scene. Like so, I
Thank you.
mean, honestly, like you and the Oakland's or psychedelic conference or hyphy cup, maybe like a
Yeah,
psilocybin cup in Denver, but mainly you and Telluride. That's those are like my two. I mean, of course, like like Wiley and stuff like on YouTube. But as far as like kind
yeah.
of like conferences and stuff, like you and Telluride.
Man, I appreciate that. I've had the opportunity to go to Telluride two or three times now. I think it was three times, and it's an expensive event to attend, But if you have the opportunity, it's like the biggest mushroom celebration, to get to dance down the street with everyone who's in mushroom costumes and get to go to these lectures by world-renowned authors and speakers. It's really nice. But on the same level, when I come home, I realize that it's very few people who get to go out and experience that. And so how can we continue to reproduce that on a local level? And that's what really inspired the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, was trying to take what I learned at these other festivals and share it with the people locally, so we could all get more excited about mushrooms, and we could all spend less money traveling out of state to go attend mushroom events. And then we could just tell the speaker, hey, we have a crowd in Oklahoma. We've got thousands of people based on our past 2 events that will come to a mushroom festival. And so that really helps to persuade speakers to come all the way from California or all the way from Florida to come to Oklahoma, a place they've never been before and probably never planned to come. But if people show up to learn, they'll show up to teach.
Oh yeah, the Oklahoma, like, to me, like, so I lived like all around the United States. I got I would say Colorado and Oklahoma are like the quickest places I scored shrooms. It was Oklahoma by like a country mile, like literally like within a day.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've heard so many stories. I mean, people move to Oklahoma and they are like, people are so nice here. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's depending on where you grew up and depending on if you moved to Oklahoma, like, yeah, there's definitely a sense of Southern hospitality and community that you'll find, especially with the way the cannabis community has grown since legalization. It's really helped to, in a certain way, open people's hearts to helping out one another. And a monetary value aside, helping one another with access is something that it's been nice to be proud of as an Oklahoman, to be like, yeah, people are genuinely helpful in our state. Politics aside, the people, the Oklahomans are generally helpful, in my opinion and experience.
Don't judge Oklahoma by its politics. Like, the people are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard unless I've met speakers who still say, coming to Oklahoma, they met the nicest customers they've ever met at all the events they've ever done. And it's because people in Oklahoma they're so, I would say in a certain sense, we're a bit behind when it comes to learning about mushrooms in general, like not just the magic mushrooms, but mushrooms in general. We don't really have a lot of like a big foraging community. So there's not a lot of like public knowledge around mushrooms. So when we throw these big mushroom events and people come, they're genuinely curious. They're like, what is this mushroom? And, when they're asking what a cordyceps mushroom is, they're like, why would someone take that? And it's not necessarily in a rude way, but it's because this mushroom is so weird looking and so new that they're just trying to understand why would someone eat this mushroom that, when it's dry costs $650 a pound. Like there's these, it's a certain aspect of newness for a lot of people that they're not used to, because people who sell mushroom products in California, it's generational. Everyone grew up there with mushrooms and cannabis and everything else. That's nothing new. But people in Oklahoma, this is kind of new territory. And so for that, I think a lot of people are grateful for their interactions when they come to our events, because people are genuine and they're curious and they want to get to know you and they want to get to support your business. They just want to learn a little bit before they do.
Now, in Oklahoma, are you allowed to forage or do forays or anything?
Yeah, we actually I'm very proud of this. I actually just helped Senator Mary Boren. She's Senator of Norman. We just passed the wild plant and fun.
Hang on, I got a truck driving by, so I'll mute my microphone.
So we actually just passed a new Senate bill this past session, which allows for wild foraging of plants and fungi. So this is really awesome. It's the first time in state history that it's ever been legal to go on state property and forage edible mushrooms or plants. or nuts or fruit, these types of things. And so before that, although people did it, and people technically, there were people who had been fined, it wasn't legal in the legislative terms. And so it's really nice to be able to help enact policy change, although it may seem futile to some people. At the end of the day, what it does for me as an educator is, now that things are legal to forage for personal use, I can take a group of people out and we can all go and forage together. And I can show everyone what to find. What does the real edible mushroom look like? What does the fake or poisonous mushroom look like? And then we can go and we can cook all these edible mushrooms at a picnic table and everyone can enjoy them. So, I'm sure there's people who are like, well, why couldn't you do that anyway? We probably could have. We probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble with it. But for me, this policy change shows that legislators, that there is interest in mushroom foraging. And there's not just interest in psychedelic mushrooms. So for me, it's about trying to convince these legislators that we don't just care about magic mushrooms. We care about all mushrooms. And, on that, if you were to be, foraging a psychedelic mushroom, this is the funny thing about it. If you were to forage them with the prior knowledge that you know what the mushroom is, then it could technically be considered possession of a controlled substance, right? Because you know what the mushroom is and you know that mushroom has psilocybin. But if you don't know the species and you're taking it for identification purposes to, say, a university or, say, to your home to take out a mushroom identification guide and try and identify it, then you're okay. But if you, are collecting hundreds of these little mushrooms in a bag, then it kind of looks like what you're doing. So that's like these general gray area nuances. Is like when I did my foraging, when I found Oklahoma Wild, I took one mushroom. I never did the genetic testing until I got home, so I wasn't 100% sure what I had. Then I took the spores and I discarded the genetic material. I tested what the spores, they came back for Psilocybe cubensis, and then legally I had the spores, but I did not have the controlled substance. And so that is how I was able to maintain the spores, and then, get the spores to my friends in Colorado, who were then able to grow them out legally. And then they could take the spores, send them back to me. And then from there, I could distribute the spores. So it's, really great areas working in mushrooms. But for me, it's important to work in as much of a clean way as I can, because I do work with senators. I do work with local policymakers. And the last thing I want to do is harm my reputation and make, any one of these legislators think that the only reason I'm here is for magic mushrooms, because that's really only a part of the reason. And honestly, part being like maybe 25%.
Oh, yeah. And go on that, like on the bigger picture too, is like, we don't know jack about mushrooms. Like, we're just scratching the surface. Like, there's more mushrooms than plants. So, like, we don't even know like a third of them, or shit, even like a quarter of them.
I can't remember. I think there's
or even less than that.
300,000 or 400,000 species of known plants, and there's like estimated to be like 1.5 million species of fungi. And for me, it's insane. Like, that's just an insane number. And since 1969, mushrooms were classified. All species of fungi were classified in Kingdom Plantae. Like, they were considered plants. And so it's only within like the past 50 years that mushrooms have been on their own, and that people have been doing genetic analysis to test and see if this is its own species or if it's just something that's been known before. And so in Oklahoma, there are graduate students who are finding and documenting new species every year. Like, new species of mushrooms are being found every year in Oklahoma and almost every other state around the United States, because before, people weren't really looking, and when they were, they just considered them plants, so they wouldn't do the genetic testing. So I encourage anyone who's out there collecting mushrooms or is interested in foraging, to look up the Ohio Mushroom DNA Sequencing Lab. This is a free lab that if you take the iNaturalist observation and you dry out the mushroom, they will, and you send it to them, they will do the DNA analysis for free.
Is that the one by Alan Rockefeller by any chance?
Yeah, that's Alan Rockefeller, Kyle Kanan, and they run that. And it's crazy how much data they've produced for free for the community. So I really encourage people to take advantage of it. I mean, how cool would it be to find a mushroom, to send it to them, and them to tell you that you just found a new species? Like, I've never had that opportunity, but I've got my fingers crossed that someday I find a mushroom that's unique, like genetically, because of course, I'm very grateful, very, very grateful for the Oklahoma wild experience. But I also think it would be pretty sweet to find a new species for Oklahoma.
That's why I take spore prints of everything I find or clone it.
Yes.
So
I love
just
that.
just in case,
I love that mentality. That is a good mentality to have. Yes.
So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility you're gonna find something new. Then who knows? Maybe this mushroom has like some beneficial compound for elements and stuff, or maybe it's something really crucial for the environment. Because also, like I remember Paul Stamets saying, like a lot of these mushrooms are at risk of going extinct because of shit we've done. So it's a good idea to like preserve them.
Did you hear about the fungus that's recently been found in Chernobyl that feeds off of radiation?
Melanin.
Is it melanin? It's producing
Yeah.
melanin?
Radiosynthesis is like the name came up. But yeah, absorbs melanin, absorbs the radiation. It uses that to kind of like help power or keep the fungus afloat. But yeah, I have that like on my LinkedIn, but I guess they call it radiosynthesis.
That's just so crazy to me, and it's amazing because it in a certain way it's so nice because nature is saving our ass like again. You know what I mean? In some ways it's just so crazy that nature is able to help fix our human fuck ups.
Yeah, Lord knows we fucked up a lot and continue to.
Yeah, and maybe that's honestly probably why Kingdom Fungi were here before us, because they knew how to make the planet to be more in this symbiotic mutualistic relationship. And we've somehow lost the plot as humans. We've lost this plot of, I think it's so funny, like we go on vacation to beautiful places and we're like, wow, this is so beautiful, I love this. And then we come home and we're like, damn, this is not how I imagine like nature interacting when we like driving through like suburbia and you like see these like rows of houses and like only new planted trees and there's no forest, there's no like established nature. It just all seems like a Sims game. And
the
so
yards are perfect all year round,
Yeah. I mean, it honestly, like when I go over to my my father-in-law's house and they have their yard sprayed and it's like they spray it like, I can't remember what it is. I think it's like a weed thing, but it's like they spray it blue.
Like a true green or something.
Yeah. It always just blows my mind because they know that when it rains or when they use the sprinkler system, like all the neighbors, everyone in this gated community does it. When it rains, all the chemicals that they spray onto their yard go into their pond. And then that causes an algae bloom in their pond. And then their HOA has to pay for the algae bloom chemicals. And so like they don't realize that they're causing their own problems. And it's like these small little things, that I think as humans, if we had more of these psychedelic experiences where we felt more connected to the world around us, we would change our daily habits to be a little bit more in line with nature and more in line with like a sustainable lifestyle.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like a lot of the time I do like fungus, it just feels like I'm part of like a network, like a hiking network almost, where I'm just like,
yes,
it's kind of like in touch with everything. Oh, another thing pisses me off about gated communities and like really snobby, like uppity rich people. Leave leaves in your goddamn yard. Like that provides so like a habitat for like insects, fungi, everything. It's the natural cycle of things. But yet, got spray pests like Roundup on everything.
It's
That's
literally it's mind-boggling. They want beautiful yards, and so they cut them and they paint them, and then they spray chemicals to make sure nothing grows except for their grass that are genetically resistant to the pesticides they spray. So in my opinion, it's kind of a lost cause. But there's actually been some local businesses in Oklahoma that I've spoken with about this, and they actually said what they've been doing is they've actually been doing test plots. So they'll go to these gated communities and they'll tell like a person on the corner lot, because there's been a resurgence in these ideas of plant native plants, of grow native flowers or grow native grasses, and it's awesome. And so what these local businesses are doing is they're convincing these gated communities, at least one person on the corner, to start growing more of these native flowers and more of these native grasses, and they'll plant it for free. And then once this person on the corner has this big beautiful garden and if all these native plants, a lot of the neighbors start to ask, hey, who did your yard? And like, this isn't me trying to sell anyone on anything. This is like local garden companies who've told me their successes because they've decided to grow local native plants in these rich communities, and they do it for free one time, and then everyone else realizes how beautiful it looks, and then they get to say that they're supporting a local business, they're growing native plants, and there's like this like more monetary value of growing for the upper echelon of society. They feel better when they're growing native plants, whereas like us and like I don't know, like everyone else, we're just like, nah, this is normal. Like this is how it should be. But you can't convince people with a lot of money that they should do the right thing for the right reason. You have to convince them that they want to do it for their own reason.
exactly, man. I could not agree more. And you're right. Like somebody's like planting native grasses, like my neck of the woods. Somebody plants like Indian grass or big blue stem or a number like buffalo
Mhm.
grass. One, it looks cool. Two, you're bringing like, you know, natural like or native insects and faunas, birds,
Mhm.
and all that stuff's cool to look at. It does make you feel happy as like you do look like a lawn in like a gated community,
Yep.
and like it just looks soulless. you know,
It's the
it looks
Truman Show.
soulless.
It's the Truman Show, man. It's what it
Yeah,
feels like. It doesn't spark the like, oh, that looks beautiful, or oh, look at like it's like, oh, look, Bob down the street got a new Corvette. Like, the only things you like recognize or see that's new is like these monetary values, or like a new house being built, or a neighbor's new car, or a new fence, or you don't get to have these new unique experiences with seeing the different seasonal changes of the plants and seasonal changes of the insect migrations. And not everyone's interested in that, but those who consume mushrooms and those who are interested in mushrooms, they do, and they value that. And I think that's a lot of people, especially people who are interested in listening to this right now.
could not agree anymore. And the cannabis, well, at least like here, because I mean, there's kind of like the boutique, small like batch like cannabis that are like, oh, hey, we're growing, native soil, use teas and ferments and stuff. As with, I mean, it's commercial, but a lot of like home grow a little bit too. I mean, yeah, you get
Mhm.
like the giant like warehouses like 30,000 square feet of canopy that are using up a bunch of electricity, but I don't think that's sustainable. And I think, eventually we're going to go to more of a natural type, like outdoors, something with terroir,
Yeah,
have those roots hit native soil. And like those people, I think are kind of, seeing the big picture and kind of, expanded from there. And I think that's why like a lot of cannabis people are into mushrooms as well.
I totally agree. I've seen so many cannabis companies. I've done consultations with people who are like, we're at a point where we're just spending too much on salts, too much on synthetic inputs for our plants. And so ultimately what they're interested in doing is finding ways to get into organic soil or get into more natural based soil, not just their plants sitting in cocoa, and basically controlling a nutrient regimen from their pH and all the different fertilizers that they're using. And so for me, I really think that from a financial perspective, going more natural is more sustainable. You will save more money in the long run as your plants and your microbes become more mature and create this more fertile soil for them to grow in. But for some people, they don't see they can financially sustain the cost of growing with salt-based nutrients. So there's, for them, there's no difference. As a medical card holder, I've had 100% organic sun-grown cannabis. I've had 100% indoor salt-grown, cannabis. Both of them are really, really great. I'm not going to say one is better than the other.
Testing. Oh yeah, good weed's good weed, man.
That's what I'm saying. It comes down to the genetics. If you favor the genetics in the outdoor environment more than the indoor environment, that's your preference. But for me, there's great benefits to growing indoors, and there's really great benefits to going outdoors. It just depends on your circumstances. And one of my favorite experiences, as a grower, has been taking my mushroom compost and amending it into my soil that my cannabis is growing in. Knowing that this mycelial network and all these microbes and these plant roots are interacting and helping one another, it's awesome.
So do you grow out say you grow mushrooms and cannabis? Say have you used Oklahoma Wild and kind of plant it outdoors with your cannabis, and you just psychedelic mushrooms growing right next to some herb?
Yes,
that's the ultimate hippie dream right
there, dude.
It's
the ultimate and it's real. If anyone who's listening, this is what you do. You plant your cannabis plant, make sure it's established, well growing. When you take your mushroom blocks, whether it's your colonized substrate or it can be your substrate after you've harvested, and you just amend it, you put it onto the top layer of the soil, and then you amend it with some cocoa coir on top of that. So that way it's not exposed to the sun, and that way little birds and insects can't come and eat the grains from your substrate. Now that cocoa will hold on to water, and because it's already colonized mass, it'll start to pin and it'll grow your mushrooms. So it's definitely doable. If you grow cannabis outdoors, you can definitely grow your cubes with your cannabis 100%. It's not just something you see on the shroomery. It's something I've experienced, and it's something you can do too.
Have you noticed maybe some does it work with each other, where you say the psilocybin kind of the mycelium from the psilocybe kind of helps with the cannabis, not necessarily psychedelic properties, because that won't happen, but just they sync together, one helps the other grow better?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the biggest thing being water and nutrient cycling. There's a lot of nutrients in water that the psilocybe mycelium has access to that it can share with the plant. And the plant has a lot of sugars and carbon that it can share with its mycelium. Yeah, check out Ty Guy Grows High. I mean, he's grown in his outdoor beds and indoor. So that's awesome. That's, for me, that's something that I always encourage people to do, because if you are in a state or you are in a place where you feel comfortable growing cannabis, why not try and grow both of them together? It's a fun experiment, and if you get it to work, I mean, you feel like you're a mad scientist like Breaking Bad.
So I was thinking about that. I was wondering maybe plants excrete different root exudates based on the different species of mushroom. So I was kind of wondering about that. But I mean, I've grown oysters, put spent oyster blocks around, had oysters growing, but I've never done anything with psilocybe outdoors, which I should probably start doing. That, just start spreading spores around, see if anything takes.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's yours. I mean, what I would do is any of your spent substrate, I would just start putting in one area that's a shady area. I mean, it's winter right now, so I mean, it's you're not gonna have much luck. But if you start doing it in the spring, when we start getting a lot more rain, and you don't want it to be in an area that gets full sun, because sometimes that can dry out the cakes, and
Yeah.
then you'll get little pins, but then the pins won't grow into full mushrooms. So sometimes a place that gets half shade, half sun is good. That way you can ensure that your mushrooms don't dehydrate as they're growing.
And kind of go back to like the Oklahoma wild, like, so
Yeah,
when you foraged it outdoors, it was yay big, but it expressed different indoors. What kind of substrate do you grow on, or what
So
spawn and substrate do you usually use?
yeah, so outdoors it was growing on manure. So that
Hmm.
so it was growing in a mixture of horse and cow manure, and it was also the horses' diet. They were eating grain, a mixture of different dried grains. I think it was oats and one other thing I can't remember. But then they were eating hay, and so just like straw wheat hay, or like wheat. And so for me, that was what I stuck to, because I knew that that's what the mushroom grew on. That's what I tried to stick with when I grew it at home. So the first couple iterations of cultivation were with manure-based substrates. And we found that growing them on the manure-based substrates, they grow a lot faster, compared to if you grow them just on vermiculite and cocoa coir or gypsum, the CVG combo.
Yeah.
But for me, that's just been my personal experience. Not everyone likes to grow on manure-based substrate. The strain worked great with either one, but because the variety was growing in manure, and it's been found so recently, it hasn't had time to really lose its vigor. Like when it grows on manure, that is its known nutrient source, versus the CVG. That's not a nutrient source. Cocoa coir doesn't have nutrients, it holds water. Vermiculite doesn't have nutrients, it holds water. Gypsum has nutrients, but not nutrients for growth. And it has nutrients that help with the hardiness and thickness of the chitin of the cell walls of the mushroom.
Yeah.
The grain is really the most important thing when it comes to growing in a CVG combo. Is having a high quality grain and having high quality genetics will always trump having the perfect substrate combo.
Now, have you tried like kernels, like popcorn kernels, and just like straight cocoa? Because I heard of people doing that like a lot nowadays.
Yeah, so like just like pasteurizing the cocoa and putting the colonized corn on the cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that one, but I have seen people. Like I have a friend who he teaches a class on sustainability, and he actually reuses his CVG, because CVG is inert. He'll take his spent substrates, he'll grind it up, and then he'll incorporate that into his next batch of substrate, and he'll just he'll rehydrate it and repasteurize it. And so he's basically using the same media and just incorporating more nutrients through his grain source. And so, everyone is coming up with these really cool, unique ways to grow. And I think that's what's awesome about the community, is that we all have different ways of growing, or different budgets, or different, materials at home. And ultimately that allows us to produce different methods. When I was cultivating early on, my preferred thing as my grain source was deer corn, like deer feed corn. And so it grew all my varieties grew really great on that. The Oklahoma Wild originally started growing on that as its grain source. And then when it transitioned to growing in Colorado, it was growing on Milo or sorghum.
Yeah, yeah. Man, have you noticed like any different like species of psilocybe like grow better like on millet compared to like oats or
I so all
kernels or
my
rice, sorghum? Have you noticed any of that?
I haven't seen. So when it comes to the substrates, I will say I've seen more species be particular to, they want to grow on manure based or compost based substrate more than they want to grow on CVG.
Would that be
Psilocybe
like
can
more
be,
like the pans?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
pans, like psilocybe, ovoids, like ovoid cystiata. I can't pronounce the whole thing right, but there's a lot of really interesting other psilocybe species that they grow and they're really nice and unique, but they don't grow as well on CVG. They need to be grown in this manure or this like compost based mix. And so, when it comes to growing them, you'll also notice that sometimes when you grow them in manure and sometimes when you grow them in CVG, even though they're using the same grain, the mushrooms will look different. The mushrooms might have had a different moisture capacity. So every time you grow mushrooms, they're going to look a little bit different. And yes, for the comment that I did see, yes, I did say recycling your substrate. So to touch on that one more time, I have a friend who's taking his CVG, he's hydrating it, then he's letting it cool. He's putting it in a monotub with his colonized grain. All his mushrooms are growing. He's harvesting them all. When it's time to take his substrate and, typically dump it or throw it away, like what a lot of people say they do, he takes it and he dries it out. And then he mixes it with water again and adds a little bit more of fresh cocoa and fresh gypsum. And then he just repasteurizes it and then adds more grain. So, in a certain sense, he's keeping the cocoa and he's keeping the verm, but every time he makes it, he adds a little bit of fresh cocoa and a little bit of fresh gypsum. And so he's trying to reduce how much he's going through because he found that he felt like he was being wasteful when he's just doing if it's inert media and the media doesn't have any nutrients, then why can't we just re-sterilize it every time?
All right, there you go. Call it awesome tech.
Yeah. Shout out to that's actually from my my buddy in Oregon. Of course I can't remember his name right now, but if I think about it while we're chatting, I'll put it down there. But very, very cool.
Is your buddy able to consistently do this, or is it only for a few times, or?
It was actually a class. He taught a class at this mushroom festival I spoke at in Washington and Vashon Island. And it was a class on mushroom sustainability. I mean, he talked about reusing agar plates. He even talked about, when you grow, for me, for sustainability purposes, I would do all my colonized grain in mason jars. That way I could reuse them, right? And so one of the things that I found is easiest to break up a mason jar when you're trying to break up your colonized grain is, one, never fill it more than 3/4 full. And two, when you break it, take a tennis ball and knock it on the glass.
Oh, I always use my palm, but
me too. Okay. Until I had a sore ass palm, and I had a I don't know, it was someone who came to my education class. They came and they were like, "Hey, I was doing that with my palm and I broke the glass jar."
Oh shit.
And I was like, how fucking hard were you hitting it? That was my first question. But for me, if I always hit it with my palm until my brother came over one day and he was like, dude, just hit it with a tennis ball so your palm doesn't hurt. So if you have a dog and they have a tennis ball or you play tennis, take that and hit that side of the jar and save yourself, the palm beating. But another thing,
I always try to use mason jars because bags are just, that's really my main criticism of the mushroom industry in general is bags, plastic bags.
Yeah. You can even though they're single use, my friend, his name is Simon. So he actually he talks about reusing substrate, reusing agar plates, and then he would also talk about reusing the bags. And so instead of cutting the bags, what he would do is he would zip tie them. Instead of sealing them, he'd zip tie them, and then he'd cut the zip tie off, and then he would re-sterilize the grains in that same bag.
No kidding.
So he wouldn't seal the bag, and so this was one thing that he found that in his path to sustainability, he was like, well, if a bag is single use, when you sterilize it, you don't seal it, right? You only seal it once it comes out of the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
But instead of sealing it, if you just fold it and then zip tie it, it's the same thing. And so he found that he could reuse the bags 4 or 5 times, even though they were single use. he could actually get multiple cycles out of the same bag. So, it's
No kidding.
there's certain ways that you can do it. There's a company called Unicorn Bags that they
Oh
have
yeah, I'm familiar with unicorn.
yeah, they got biodegradable bags, but those ones won't be so good for reusing multiple cycles. The high pressure, high heat won't be good for the multiple recurring cycles, but the typical non-biodegradable plastic mushroom bags, those can, in my opinion and my experience and in the class that I attended, those can be reused multiple times. And all you've got
Okay,
to do is use a zip tie.
sweet. So I can use that for the functional and gourmet mushrooms because I mean, like with lion's mane, you don't really have a choice.
Yeah, and I will say one of the reasons I like mason jars, aside from the sustainability, is because mason jars, if you fill them all around the same, like 3/4 filled, it basically keeps the mass around the same, and it allows you to put your mycelium on a schedule, so you can start to realize, oh, this jar and this jar are the same strain, so they should colonize about the same. Versus when you're making your mushroom bags, they don't always weigh the same amount, and sometimes
Yeah.
one mushroom bag takes longer to colonize. And so, in some aspects, the smaller the mass, the faster the mycelium can colonize everything. So if you had one 10-pound bag and you inoculate it, or you had 10 1-pound bags, those 1-pound bags are going to be colonized way faster than the 10-pounder. You know what I mean? So it's always good to work with these small increments, and then from there you can really, really expand your mycelium. And
Kind of
one,
sounds analogous to cannabis a little bit.
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, because like me, I used to grow like giant mono tubs and stuff, but now shoe boxes, man.
Yep. Yeah.
Like I mean, you can't
and
like
also,
mushrooms. You can't sell like like $10 or $15 a gram, and just like it's kind of hard to like push it. I mean, I don't push anyway. I kind of grow for medicinal use for myself because I'm getting to be an old guy. But like back when I was back when I was your age, yeah, I used to sell shrooms. I was getting like $15-$20 a gram, and people would buy them left and right. But like nowadays, the risk kind of really isn't worth it. If I started growing mass, I couldn't sell it anyway.
mm,
Plus, like I work at a university, so
yeah.
can't
And
really do those days are over.
the
But like,
craziest thing is I've actually had people who want to grow. I've done classes and talked with people. They want to grow the mushrooms because they like the way the mushrooms look. They don't want to eat them. And like this person raised their hand and they're like, what if I want to grow the mushrooms but I don't want to eat them? And everyone in the class turned and looked at him like, what the heck did this person just say? And then
gift them, just gift
one
them.
of the guys in the class goes, I'll take them. So, that is sometimes the benefit of going to these classes and connecting with your local community, is there are people who have genetics and they're willing to share. And you just got to find the right people and develop these relationships where you can trust people, and, don't just trust some random stranger. Meet them. Hopefully, go to a class that they've also sat through and learned about. So that way, your interests and your hobbies align, not
Yeah,
just from the financial standpoint.
it's kind of interesting with like you're saying with like the jars because you could do like a perpetual grow like you would do with like cannabis as well. I mean, shrooms take half the time, but you can like literally put like on a production cycle. Which
Mm-hmm.
there's companies up in Canada that say like Optimum Health, like yeah, Optimum Health, or I
Yep.
can't. Is that the name of it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
pretty
they're in BC, but they have like a giant
huge
grow.
grow.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
don't do like synthetic psilocybin like a lot of these other companies are doing. Like they try to stick with the real thing, which there have
Mm-hmm.
been studies that show like people get more out of the real thing than like synthetic psilocybin. Kind of like smoking weed compared to like Marinol.
Yeah.
So can't beat nature, man.
You
So I
can't.
thought about that, but I really like the way they grow. But I was kind of looking at them from a sustainability standpoint. I mean, they know they use like mono tubs and stuff, but shit, I forgot what I was saying right there. Anyway, I just like the fact that they're growing, like mushrooms instead of doing like psilocybin. but
I totally
or
agree.
synthetic stuff.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't get much sleep last night, so
oh, all
a
good, all
little
good.
out of it.
I was just gonna touch on like the entourage effect. Like that's
Oh
for
yeah, yeah.
me, it's so important. Like people know that people know and acknowledge the benefits of the entourage effect with cannabis, but not everyone realizes that that same thing is in mushrooms. You know, it's not just psilocybin and psilocin. There's also aruginacin, baeocystin, norpsilocin, norbaeocystin. There's all these other varieties of compounds.
Triterpenoids, beta glucans.
Yeah, I mean, so many things that impact the way our experiences are. So, you know, for me, it really just kind of depends on what you're looking for in the experience. There's certain companies that are trying to patent molecules that give you the psychedelic experience, but for like a 15-minute period. You know what I mean? So there's companies that are trying to change you're trying they where they you get the benefits of magic mushrooms without the psychedelic trip. And so, you know, in my opinion, the pharmaceutical industry is going to try and change and manipulate nature in any which way they can to capitalize and get a stronghold on making money off of people. And when, you know, us as the consumers, us as patients, when we can grow our own medicine, we don't need them anymore. We
Oh
really
no.
don't. And they hate that. They hate that. And so that's why they try and censor all this information for us to learn and help one another. Because every one person that we tell about microdosing is one less person that's on Xanax or that's on Lyrica or that's on some of these other pharmaceutical prescriptions that, you know, hopefully they can slowly live without with the benefits of mushrooms or the benefits of what they, you know, maybe lowering their dose and consuming mushrooms. Not everyone has to quit cold turkey, and I don't recommend doing that. But I recommend thinking about trying mushrooms in the same way people try pharmaceuticals. It's like when your doctor tells you to try this and there may be adverse effects, let me know and we'll change it. You know, you have to think of mushrooms in that same way. And just because, you know, tidal waves doesn't work for you doesn't mean the Oklahoma wilds won't. I mean, like I
Yeah.
mentioned, Oklahoma wilds are very low dose, moderate, perfect for beginners, not just in the dosing stand perspective, but also in the cultivation. They grow fast, they grow great. So I mean, it's a good mushroom to try and start off with.
It's crazy because yeah, like you said, there's entourage effects and different like or different lineages affect you
Mhm.
different. There's this like, do you know who Kevin Jodery is by any chance? The cannabis guy.
Mm,
Anyway, he broke
I
down
think-
cannabis into a couple different like groups. You know, just like feel floral, fruit and such. But I
yeah.
was wondering if we can do that for shrooms. I mean, we know way less about shrooms than we do cannabis, but
Hmm.
I'll be honest, like a golden teacher, it's kind of good for just goofing off, just chilling out. Or, if you want to go deep for like some therapy and knock on some doors, like for me, tidal wave,
Yes.
you know, tidal wave to me is like really euphoric and
Hmm.
sometimes it gets challenging and you will knock on some doors as compared to like a golden teacher, you know,
Yeah. I
way
mean,
different, like way different.
tidal wave is B plus and PE
Yeah.
cross. So I mean, it's got
Doma.
exactly. So it's got some, you know, B plus positive. That B plus is that B positive, right? B plus is the person who came out with that. It was originally B positive, not B plus. It's B positive. And so
Mm,
you know,
okay.
that
Be positive.
variety, yeah, it's B positive was crossed with PE. And so that's why you get that happy euphoric, but then you kind of get that like, whoa, I gotta deal with some shit real quick. You know, that's
But the thing
yeah.
is, I don't think it's all psilocybin though. I really don't. Even though, like, say, like Tidal Wave has like way higher psilocybin
Mhm.
content, I don't think it's all psilocybin.
Yeah,
There's
no, it's
other
definitely not.
alkaloids in there, and
Yeah.
the terpenes, like the triterpenoids, I think play a part too. Because a lot of things that cannabis has, shrooms
Mhm.
have in them as well, if not more. So
Yeah.
I'm real interested, like if one day we can crack the puzzle. Then again, probably not, because like when I do shrooms, like there's parts of my brain I didn't even know that worked. So.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean, when we're on the Shroomies, they're connecting in ways that they typically don't because our default mode network is not in control. That is the incredible part about the creativity and synapses that are highlighted and activated. One of the things that I do want to mention just before I forget is, for those who haven't heard about me or my work and what I've been doing, one way I do recommend staying up to what I do and all the events and stuff is going to themushroomdirectory.com. This is a new website that I'm creating for the mushroom community, and it's a directory for people who are looking for reputable vendors for education, market vendors, genetics vendors, job opportunities. This is a website for those of us who are trying to find ways to connect outside of social media, because the truth is, if I start another social media account today, I'm going to get shut down next week. And so I'm not going to try and play, this game of cat and mouse with Mark Zuckerberg. Instead, I'm going to try and focus on building this online platform where people can connect. People who are interested in purchasing products from reputable vendors can go on the website and find vendors. They can also find mushroom clubs near them. They can find mushroom festivals near them. And it's just basically in all things encompassing mushrooms to help you become more connected with the community. And so it's a website that I just started within the past month. It's relatively new, but this is a project that I think our community needs. We need to have people that we can recommend. We need to have people that, have access to finding, like, where is our nearest mushroom club? Like, how would you even find your local mushroom club besides just typing it in on Google? And
now,
so
does Oklahoma have mycological societies by any chance?
Oklahoma is actually shut down as of 2 years ago. So, unfortunately, the Oklahoma Mycological Society is no longer active, but the mushroom community in Oklahoma is very active. And
Hey,
so,
man, the community is what matters. I mean,
exactly.
I was involved in the community before I worked the commercial cannabis and before I started teaching. So the community is by far the most important thing, especially with psychedelics, is like it's way smaller in cannabis. But I do think like psilocybin might be legal before cannabis is decriminalized. I mean, the FDA declared like a breakthrough, breakthrough
Mm-hmm.
drug, and like you know, psilocybin kicks the living shit out of SSRIs and stuff,
Oh yeah.
which, some of these like Xanax and like Prozac and like SSRIs, they kill people. They kill people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cold turkey. As with like psilocybin, minus maybe having like a bad trip, you're gonna be fine. Like you're gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do I recommend people with psychosis or schizophrenia do psychedelics? Hell no. It's like it's not for everybody, but I think for a
Just
lot
like
of
with
people,
cannabis, honestly.
yeah, just like with cannabis and alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And prescription medication.
Oh
All
yeah,
of them.
but I
Yeah.
do see like maybe not like the natural form. I mean, that's what we care about, but obviously, like big pharma's be doing like the synthetic stuff, which doesn't compare.
Yeah.
Um,
But what we need in our own community is we need a way to be able to find, like, who are people we can rely on, like who are businesses that are doing good work, versus businesses that are just here for the money. Kind of like in the cannabis industry, and depending on where you live, it was really hard to like know from a consumer perspective, like who is like a corporate company that doesn't care about the community versus who are these local growers, local businesses that are actually trying to build something valuable.
hey,
And
that's why we
so,
have Future Cannabis Project.
yes.
Now we want to do the same thing for the mushroom community. I mean,
Yeah.
like there's like Myco Geeky and stuff, but honestly, out of that, there's like a handful. I mean, there's like Wiley's World and like Golden Philly Teacher, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know of too many other like people. And
Yeah.
campus people are mushroom people, so I was like, okay, this could be a pretty good platform. So
Yeah.
we,
Definitely cannabis people are mushroom people. Mushroom people are cannabis people, and the communities overlap so well. And I think that's why for like the mushroom directory in particular, it's gonna really help grow the mushroom community, because once people realize there's local growers in their
Yeah.
state, or there's a local mushroom club or a local mushroom festival in their state, they're going to get connected and start growing more, start foraging more, start creating better connections. And that is going to help everyone everywhere.
Now, like, are you built from like Oklahoma to like then start like expanding out, kind of like a shroomery back in the day?
So if
Don't
you're,
get me
if
wrong, I love the shroomery, but it's starting to look it's a little bit outdated, and it's kind of hard to like find like correct information because I mean there's
yeah,
threads going back like 20 years, and it's
yep,
just hard to kind of like navigate around.
it
So
is.
it's just
So
kind of be like a more organized version. And I'm not bad talking to shroomery by any means. Like
oh no,
God bless the shroomery.
bless the shroomery, but I understand going through that forum is sometimes a headache. And yeah, so that's kind of what this directory is hoping to ease. It's helping people find local businesses, local mushroom growers, local mushroom festivals, and what it'll also have is it has a marketplace. So for those, it's free to join, but if you choose any of the paid tiers, you get discounts to events, you get discounts to online courses or subscriptions. But really what the goal is, sign up for a free account. And from there, you can view our marketplace that has all of our recommendations for genetic vendors, for substrate, for plastic mushroom bags, for supplements, for mushroom gummies, mushroom chocolate, mushroom capsules, like literally everything mushroom from companies that are reputable within the space. Everything from corporate companies to small businesses, this directory is for. So it's a way for people to go on there and not just have to like, basically when you go on Google and you type in mushroom supplements, the top mushroom supplement is not the highest quality one always. Sometimes it is,
Host
but
defense?
most of the time it's some scam ass advertising. So,
I was
one of the
like,
things
mycelial substrate and lack of fruiting bodies.
you got it. You're spot on. And one of the things I saw some people commenting was about, the synthetic mushroom chocolates. Like,
The polka dots.
I always tell people, let's be real. If it's good shit, you're not gonna get it at a smoke shop. Like if you're going to like a smoke
Road
shop,
trip gummies.
if you're going to your vape shop to buy a mushroom bar, I'm sorry, but 9 times out of 10, that mushroom bar is not psilocybin. Like it's not even Amanita muscaria. It's a synthetic research chemical. It's been shown
Like a
time and time again.
4-AO or 4
Yeah,
ACO.
4-ACO, and sometimes it's not even 4-ACO. It's other unknown research chemicals.
Oh yeah,
And so,
we had a Rose City Laboratories out of Portland on a few weeks ago. They're the only like licensed psilocybin testing lab on the West Coast, and he was telling me like when they were testing like chocolates and stuff and like the gas station gummies, they're
yeah,
finding like horse tranquilizer. So I was like,
yeah. And
ketamine?
the craziest thing is, at the end of the day, like as an educator, I've approached some of these shop owners. I'm like, hey, do you know like what's in this chocolate bar? And they're like, I don't know, but it's for microdosing. And I'm like, okay, like I look at the package and like the only thing it says is proprietary mushroom blend. And then I purchase it, I get it tested. Exactly. I'm like, wait, this doesn't have any mushrooms in it. This is just a research chem. And in some of these tests, it's not even 4-ACO. It's these other really obscure psychedelic molecules. You can read about them in Sasha and Ann Shulgin's Fikal and Tikal books. Those books have a lot of these really obscure psychedelic compounds. But what I'm getting at is, the shop owners don't care.
Oh
They
no,
don't. They don't care if it has psilocybin or synthetic or
make a
nothing,
buck
because they're selling it, you're buying it, and they're not liable if something goes wrong. The company who produces it is. Of course, lawsuits can try and wrap them in as being a vector or distributor of the product. But at the end of the day, kind of like what we saw when that Diamond Shrooms death, there was someone who's already died from Diamond Shrooms. Yeah, I mean it's a known death from a mushroom product, and the FDA came out and said that they were going to crack down on these gas station mushroom products because people are actually dying.
I'm glad they're cracking down on the synthetic cannabinoids, like that shit. Like they make like turn CBD into Delta 9. You got to use dichloromethane, which is holy shit toxic. You know, and
Yeah, like
there's no analytical testing going on it, but yet it's hemp derived. I'm like, I guess you can call meth hemp derived at that point, you know, or meth ephedra derived at that point, you know. I mean, they're both considerably processed, but yeah, shit like that just needs to be cracked down on. These people don't give a fuck about you. They're just trying to make a buck. You know, they're essentially failed energy drink people. It's like,
they
oh
really,
hey, we filled that energy drinks, go CBD. Oh hey, you know, there's a market crash. 2 years later, Farm Bill, boom, all this shit popped up.
it's just like the gas station boner pills, dude. It's the same thing.
The rhinos.
Everyone who's you go to the gas station, there's all these different brands, and they're always creating new brands with new ingredients. And that's what people do. They try and capitalize on this new mushroom industry, and they'll sell you on a packaging of a mushroom bar that has mushrooms all over it, and there's not even a single mushroom in there. And so that's why, like, on my Oklahoma Fungi website, I have articles on, like, I have blog posts on how to make your own mushroom chocolate, how to make your own mushroom tea, how to make your own mushroom capsules, because you don't need to rely on these companies, because when you rely on them, they take advantage of you 9 times out of 10, and not and 10 times out of 10 if you're buying them at a gas station. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry to say it. I hope I'm not breaking any bad news to anyone tonight, but always, always, always source and support your local anything, even if that means mushroom dealer.
Support anything local for sure. And I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing these smoke shop like CBD where they sell CBD if they can't sell THC. 100% keep that. But like all the other synthetic shit, for the love of God, get it. Like, you don't know what's in there. I get it. You know, it's like a trend. It's a fad. You know, like people are limited, but it's America. You could find shrooms and cannabis on damn near every block in the country, you know, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be safer than what you're going to find like at a smoke shop or a gas station.
And I will say this, you know, there is definitely a place for research chemicals. You know, as a psychedelic enthusiast, I have tried some. You know, there's definitely a place for people who want to experiment in those ways. But I think it's deceiving when a company markets a chocolate bar with mushrooms all over it and doesn't put any mushrooms in there. I think
polka dot bars, man, those got me way years ago. Then I saw proprietary blend. I researched in this 4AC. I'm like, God damn it. So it didn't feel like all it was like, oh, hey, the floor is moving. You know, there wasn't profound, spiritual, insightful, euphoric shit, you know?
Yeah. Agreed. And that's why I think it is so important that people try the natural whole fruiting bodies, that they try the real thing. And then if they find that their stomach, they get nausea from eating the whole mushroom, then they do a lemon tech and they strain out the fruit, the fungal matter, you know, the biomass, and then they just drink the liquid. Or if they have the ability to get gummies with fruiting body extract, like the ones that I've talked about from Colorado, those, in my opinion, are very high quality, and you know, they are a shorter duration of the experience, but they are a more intense journey. So, you know, for those who are looking for a more gradual, longer duration, stick with the fruiting bodies in the tea and the chocolates and the capsules. Those who want something short and quick, you might look into lemon teching or doing an extract.
I like those, but they can be pretty damn intense if you're not prepared.
Yeah.
First time doing lemon tech, I got humbled pretty quick. It was awesome though.
Yeah, you know, lemon tech will smack you around. It's something that I think a lot of people, as you know, like for me as a beginner, when I first got into mushrooms, I tried it once, had an amazing time, and I wanted to try it again, but I wanted to like try even more. And so I think that, you know, when you go into a psychedelic with that sort of mindset, you're going to get humbled, whether it's that second experience or the third. There's eventually going to be a point where you can't handle that shit. And that's okay. Like, you know, you're going to have these overwhelming trips and you're going to survive. And if you have the right support systems, if you're a responsible person and you make sure that you're in a responsible place before you take these substances, then you'll come out on the other side stronger.
Yeah, I don't believe in a bad trip. I don't. You can always learn from it. I don't believe in a bad trip at all. Even though it's could be very challenging, you take something away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be completely overwhelming. It can break you. It can break you down completely in an ego death. But in the end, 2 weeks after that experience, ultimately you end up feeling better, and that's what these profound experiences show us more often than not. Is that although we're uncomfortable in these short periods of time, it's because we're not allowing our conscious mind to acknowledge these thoughts that we're hiding. And once we acknowledge them and we understand them and we accept them, then we're chilling.
Now, do you for functional mushrooms gourmet and psychedelic, do you do like any breeding at all, or say something losing in potency, you'll go ahead and try like revive it to where it's picking back up in potency again?
Mm-hmm.
Um, some hybrid vigor stuff. I haven't really done much breeding, minus like some smash tech, like no monocultures or anything, because
Yeah, yeah.
that takes a shit ton of effort and a
Yeah,
while.
it does.
But
It does. I, for me, I haven't done too much, but anytime I notice that my mushrooms look odd, like they don't look textbook, like they don't look typical of how they should normally develop or grow, that is when I will stop growing that particular culture and I'll go back to spore of that
hmm,
same genetic, and then I'll restart from spore. So kind of like if your cannabis plant looks weird, instead of taking a clone from it, you'll just restart from seed, and
yeah.
typically that will solve your issue. And if that doesn't solve your issue, then it can be, for cannabis, it can be what's in your soil. Your nutrients can definitely impact, the way that your plant responds, and of course the light.
Oh yeah. Speaking of light, do you always put your stuff under like a light UV, or sometimes you just put it in the
Man,
dark and just let it do its thing? Or
yeah, when it's growing on grain, I just sometimes I've when I first started, I just kept it in the closet in the complete darkness. But once I go to fruiting, once they're in a tub, I keep them in a place that gets, about 8 to 12 hours of light a day, and I found that that's sufficient light for them to grow good. And you can do
nice.
anything from a tiny like lamp that's kind of lighting up this back area behind me, or like an LED strip, or like a big grow light. But you just want to make sure that it's not too hot to where it's evaporating the moisture from your grow.
Oh yeah. And Oklahoma, do you have some issue? Well, I mean, Oklahoma's more humid, say like
Yeah.
definitely like more humid than like Colorado, because I know like in Colorado you got like missed it multiple times a day.
Yeah. Yeah, Oklahoma, not too many issues with the humidity. That's one of the good things. I will say though that you do have to worry with the humidity comes mold and spores. So when it comes to contamination, that's one thing that you have to think about. But if your grow can survive through it, then yeah, you're a winner.
I
And
got a
that's
question about. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying that's the reason why I recommend growing your local variety, because it's already acclimated to the local uh, fungus and spores and stuff in that area. So, if you grow the Oklahoma wild and you live in Oklahoma, it's gonna grow better than if you were growing it in California. And so, it's always good to think about, what variety am I growing and is it gonna grow well where I'm from? Because if it's not gonna grow well outside, then I need to grow it inside.
I got a question about land races as well. I mean, I've tried stuff like Colombian and all that, but it wasn't grown like I didn't, pluck it from the ground. It was grown on like artificial substrate, like CVG and like
Mm-hmm.
some brown rice. But have you noticed like there's a difference from something you pick out of nature compared to something you grow on a? Not talking about like the way it grows, but like the experience. Have you noticed like anything different like that, or like a land race compared to like a hybrid? It's like, for example,
Yeah.
with cannabis, like the land races highs are like completely different than like the hybrid highs. So I was wondering if it's like similar with mushrooms.
Well, two similarities, like two differences. I think not a lot of people have tried. If you instead of drying out your mushrooms, if you eat them fresh, they hit like a lemon tech. They hit hard and fast. If you eat fresh psychedelic mushrooms, they hit hard and fast. And so just like a lemon tech. But the thing is, they often cause stomach irritability and nausea, so people
Yeah,
throw
that's
them
the
up.
reason I was scared to do it, because I was like, the chitin, we have a
Yeah.
hard problem digesting it. But I have heard that about like fresh shrooms. But
It's
is
because
it
of the
like way
water
worse than
content.
the dried shroom as far as like the nausea goes?
So think about it this way: when psilocin is water soluble, and psilocybin is water soluble, and so when we eat them fresh, it is a lot fat. We get these compounds like they break down and go into our bloodstream a lot faster than they would if we eat them dry, because then they go into our stomach and they get rehydrated by the contents of our stomach and the acids, and that in itself, eating the dried mushrooms with that chitin is so hard to break down in our stomach that it actually causes that irritability. So, for me, I don't really like to eat mushrooms fresh because of the irritability, how it can impact your trip. If you're throwing up during your psychedelic experience, some people feel like they're purging out their negative thoughts or their negative energy, and it benefits them. But for me, in my experience, when I'm throwing up, I find I don't really like it. It's uncomfortable, which I think maybe most people would agree with. And
Yeah.
so when you have the opportunity to eat fresh mushrooms versus dry mushrooms, the dry mushrooms and the fresh mushrooms are probably going to irritate your stomach both, but the fresh mushrooms are going to hit a lot stronger. Now, in terms of the land race, I would say eating mushrooms that are like fresh from outdoors. It's one, for me, some people wouldn't worry about it, but I do. I really don't like to eat mushrooms that are plucked straight from the manure because of all the bacteria
Hmm.
that is all over the outside of the mushroom. And so the mushroom, not just because it grows in the manure, but because of the area that it grows in and the flies and all of the things that are in that manure based ecosystem, a lot of that bacteria is what causes the irritability in our stomachs when we eat those freshly foraged wild mushrooms. And so I haven't eaten them from outdoors, like collecting a wild landrace mushroom from a cow patty and eaten it. But I have collected them, taken the spores and then grown them indoors and eaten those. And so I couldn't compare, but for me, I know that fresh mushrooms always hit harder than dry mushrooms. Wild foraged mushrooms, you have to be a little careful about the bacteria and stuff like that.
Yeah, 'cause I always wanted to go up to the Pacific Northwest and just, eat some wavy caps growing out in the woods, just straight from
Yeah, and
I just want to know what that's like. Because, like, for example, I like cannabis that's grown outdoors and the roots are hitting native soil compared to something
mhm.
that's grown indoors. So I was wondering if like mushrooms are like the same way.
Yeah, I would say for the varieties that are like Psilocybe cubensis is manure based psychedelic mushroom, but for like Psilocybe azarescens, like one of the strongest known magic mushroom varieties, it grows in Washington, Oregon coast in these grassy sand dunes. There's not bacteria present. Like these are mushrooms that you could eat wild forage, dry them out or not. And so in my opinion, these wild forage mushrooms have a broader range of alkaloids, of tryptamines, and you will find it more enjoyable. Now, I will also say sometimes that broader range, like with Psilocybe azarescens, means that they can be so powerful, so potent that they cause what's known as wood lovers paralysis.
I've had that happen with psilocybe before, though, where I
Yeah, and
just
so
couldn't move. I was
yeah,
just like,
and
I
so
couldn't stand up and I would just fall. But
there's people who have ketamine and that happens. There's people who've had acid trips and that happens. So I don't think it's a mushroom, like a compound based thing. I think it's a psychological impact of these experiences on us, is that we lose this like connection of motor function.
oh, I
And
was
so,
happy as could be. I was really happy. Like
yeah,
I was really euphoric. I just couldn't move.
yeah, it's like the ultimate being stoned. I've experienced it, and you're just like, you're not really worried that you can't move, but you're just like, I'm so like out of it that I cannot move right now.
But with the azarescence, like the paralysis is more associated with that than like a regular psilocybe. I've never done wavy caps, so like I want to. Like that's the thing I really, really want to do.
Yeah, it's known and that typically the wood-loving varieties of magic mushrooms have this tendency. They're still studying it on what exactly, whether it's a gene set or what exactly it is that causes it, but it's typically found within the wood-loving psychedelic mushrooms that causes what's that. So they've deemed it wood-loving or wood lovers paralysis.
Now, how much experience do you have with like pans, like blue meanies and stuff?
Eating them a few times, and I mean, it just takes a pinch. You only need a pinch. I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy. I
that
would,
was my experience.
like an eighth of cubensis is like a gram of um of pancyans. You know what I mean? So anytime you get in like the pinalias the varieties, I mean, you have to start low and slow. You cannot compare apples to apples. If you eat 5 grams of Psilocybe cubensis, I'm telling you, it's not gonna hit. It's not gonna hit like the 5G of pancyans. You're in for a major awakening.
So say like a wavy caps, maybe like 2 grams max, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, 2 grams max will get you there. I think anyone who takes 2 Gs of wavy caps would be in for a nice mellow but enthusiastic ride.
Because
Yeah.
I know they're potent. I just never had them. I mean, unfortunately, here in the Midwest, they don't grow. So
Yeah, that's one of the great things of Colorado. I've seen a lot of with the testing that they do there, the with Triptomics Labs and the Colorado Psychedelic Cup that they just hosted, because so many people were growing cubensis, it's encouraged more people to grow pinalius. And now there's a lot of people growing pans and a lot of people growing cubes, and we're getting all this data, and we're starting to realize, that it's not that pans are harder, it's just that they grow differently. But you can take the same amount of effort that you would to grow your cubes and grow a smaller amount of pans that will last you longer because they're that much more potent. So, for everyone, it's about finding which variety works best for them. For me, I've continued to stick with Psilocybe cubensis mainly because it's what works best for me, and I'm not really in the mood to change my regimen and find something that potentially works better when I already feel comfortable and happy.
now, do you have like any like if you had to pick a strain of
Mm.
cubensis, what's your favorite or what
Uh,
lineage?
yeah. For Psilocybe cubensis, I would say Oklahoma Wild, of course. I feel like I have to say that. But outside of that one, I would say my next favorite would be Jack Frost. This is one of my favorite varieties, and that is by blanking on the name, Wombat Labs
Yeah,
by
David Wombat.
yeah, Dave Wombat. Yep, shout out Dave.
I never I never grew Jack Frost, but what's the wrinkle thing? Like, is there like something with like
So for me, my fondness to it was because it looked so blue and white. Like as it would grow, it would bruise, and so it just had this blue and white hues to it, and I just thought it looked so beautiful, and it was like the most perfect. It was the most perfect cubensis I like ever saw and grew until I saw the Oklahoma Wild, and so
those pictures
I,
of Oklahoma Wild are rad, man. It's just
yeah,
Jack Frost though. Is there like multiple? I thought there was like kind of like where wrinkled up like a different phenotype though.
Oh yeah, there's lots of phenos. There's a lot of different. Some people have gone the more starry night where it has caps and wrinkles on the cap. Some people have gone like with the shaggy stem phenos. For me personally, the one that I was growing, it was these short 5-inch stems, all white with blue bruising, not just naturally, and then the caps were just all white. So it was just a beautiful like albino mushroom strain that I found was like to be my favorite. It was enjoyable experience, but more than that, it was very aesthetically pleasing.
Now on the mushrooms, are we kind of to the point where we like take different generations and try like back cross them like previous?
Oh, oh yeah.
Are we at that
Oh,
point yet?
yeah, we are. We're definitely we're
Sweet.
seeing people do monocultures and back and doing stabilizations and crossing things like with basically like things like tidal wave. They're creating monocultures of that and then taking it back, crossing it with PE, like what it originally came from. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is people are really familiar with mutations when it comes to mushrooms. But
Enigma, that's my favorite mutation.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but like it's a crazy one. And it's but what these things are, they're inbred. They're all like the more inbred these mushrooms get, the gnarlier, crazier, more potent they get. And so oftentimes that's what I remind people is that, the most normal looking mushrooms oftentimes are lower potency on the spectrum. If you get a mushroom like Enigma that looks like a puffball or a snowball or like a piece of coral, you're in for like a huge journey, because the slower the fruiting body takes to develop, the more time it has to produce these alkaloids and tryptamines. So if your mushroom goes from pin to fully mature in 2 days, it's not going to produce nearly as much as, this Enigma that takes 2 weeks to 3 weeks to fully grow and harvest.
Man. Got a question. Aborts. Have you noticed, would you say like some aborts tend to be a little bit more potent?
Yeah,
Or have you noticed that?
I have, not just from personal experience, but from the competitions that I've entered. We've seen from the data that they are actually, and more common than not, they are more potent than sometimes the larger fruiting bodies. And we think that that's because they're developed early on, and then the mycelium recognizes that it might not be suitable environment to grow into a large full mushroom. But because that tiny mushroom is still there and still developing, it's still producing those compounds. And so although it may be a tiny mushroom, the entire time it was there growing, it was producing those compounds. And so, I do think that there's some higher potency and some more research to be done on, the mushrooms. And honestly, that brings up a good point of, there's been some testing where they took mushrooms from the same batch. They grabbed 5 different mushrooms and they tested them. Each of the mushrooms had different potencies. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
that's why blending up your mushrooms and homogenizing the blend and then putting them in capsules is one of the best ways to have a standardized dose.
I especially noticed that with like tidal wave. I don't know if it's because like it's so unstable, but I mean just shrooms in general, they're not all the same potency as with like cannabis. Not every bud's the same.
Yeah, I mean like what's a common cannabis strain that comes off the top of your head?
Oh, me, the one I've been smoking lately, forbidden fruit.
Yeah, so like forbidden fruit. Like if I grew forbidden fruit versus your favorite grower, you're probably gonna prefer the forbidden fruit from your friend versus me. Like no offense to me, but like sometimes people just know how to grow these varieties in a better, more preferred way for their biology. So it's not always us. Sometimes it's just like the environment that these things grow in. They prefer certain things.
And like we're just scratching the surface, but I do see a lot of analogies or analogous, like shrooms are analogous in cannabis in like more in one way, like growth patterns, expressions, and I also kind of want to look at terroirs with like shrooms. Like I guarantee you, like azarescens in Washington is not the same as like Southern Oregon or Northern California. I guarantee you, like the
Yep.
expressions are different.
You're exactly right. Yeah, I mean the psilocybe ovoidiciciata that grows in Ohio is different than what's going to be grown in Pennsylvania, but they're the same species, but they're growing in 2 totally different places, hundreds of miles apart. So they've got to have unique sets of compounds, unique sets of nutrients that they've adapted to growing on, and unique tryptamines that they started to produce because of their environment.
Man, so cool. Well, man, I'm gonna probably let you go because I gotta get up early in the morning. I'm a little bit sleep deprived, so I apologize.
All good.
My ideas were a little bit scattered today. But
All
man,
good.
I could literally talk to you for like 5 hours. Like
Same,
you're a
my
wealth of
friend.
knowledge.
Thank you. And that's why I've got the mushroom directory, because we're going to be doing, these weekly, monthly meetings where everyone can just talk about their ideas. It's more about building community, getting people together. And for anyone who's interested, like I said, sign up for that free account at themushroomdirectory.com. If you're interested in purchasing the Oklahoma Wild mushroom genetics, they're $35 shipped to your door, and it comes with stickers and stuff like that, and it'll be shipped out before the holidays, if you're interested, and you get to grow some really unique landrace strains, and that's on my website, okfungi.com.
Oklahoma landrace. That's so cool. That's so cool, man. I
Yes,
had
yeah.
no idea. And you said they've been growing. So I mean, I lived in Oklahoma for about 2 years, but I mean, I've been going since I was like a little kid. But I never seen them. I mean, you're a native, so like, but they grow everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with gentlemen who's been out foraging them since the 80s, and so it's
Whoa.
yeah, it's been one of those things where if you're out in the country and you found a good pasture, you didn't really tell anyone else. You just kept going out there and collecting, because this was in a time like in the 80s, not a lot of people were growing at home. That at-home cultivation isn't as popular as it is today. So people tended to keep their foraging finds a little bit more on the down low.
Well, man, I'm definitely gonna check out the directory. We can build up the community. I
Yeah.
just started like, well, we had one called Psychonauts, but it got taken down. Thanks, YouTube. But so we're gonna try this, and that in conjunction with other people's podcasts, and the directory. We can keep building the community. I mean, cannabis is a force to be reckoned with, and I think shrooms are just gonna be right there,
Oh
or
yeah,
right
together.
behind it. So, all right. With that said, I think I'm gonna end the stream and do a few things and go to bed.
Sounds
And
good.
I'm gonna steal this from Eagle from Weed Nerd World. It's true, and I think it's a good message to spread. Random acts of kindness save lives, so let's be kind. And with that said, Jacob, you're welcome on anytime. And for
Thank
people
you
that
so
viewed
much.
in, I will see you next week. All right.
Much
Thanks.
love. Thank you.
Much
Thank
love,
you,
man.
everyone. Really appreciate your support and time.
Peace out,
Peace.
man.